think we got to Oshiyat Gimel, which in mine is on page Samach. I'm not 100% sure we got that far, but I think so. In other words, the Gemara said that one of the reasons, according to one Mandamar, that you can't use for a matzah lachmei toda in kikaros of a nazar is because you need the matzah the mitzvah matzah is only the first night of Pesach, but you need matzah which is royal yeshiva. It has to be matzah which is going to be edible the whole 7 days of Pesach, and therefore lachmei toda is only, you can only eat lachmei toda for a day and a night. So it's not going to be royal l'chol shiva. And this Amorah said, the Mishnah said you can't use lachmei toda. So one said because it's not l'shma, because it was made for lachmei toda, not for Pesach, for matzah's mitzvah. And the other one said as far that it's not matzah royal l'shiva. And the Amorah says that, so we're going to start in Yud Gimel. That's what he went into. Now he said, so it's in this sugya, it's proven. The be'in in matzah royal l'shiva. There's a requirement that the matzah of the night of Pesach has to be matzah which is roy to be eaten a whole 7 days, and that's why lachmei toda are no good. Kichain tzfir leila Rav Yosef. That was the Amorah, in who said that reason. Tanya kavasik bebraisa. And when the Gemara searched for reasons in braises, they found the brisa that said exactly like Rav Yosef. You need matzah roy l'shiva. The Eshalomer, the Rabbi who said by lachmei toda a different svara, he said lachmei toda are no good because it's not l'shma, because you need the shem matzah's mitzvah, and those are done l'shem lachmei toda. Eino cholek al ikra din, the matzah she'ein royal l'shiva ein yotzim. He doesn't argue with that din. The sphere lay the eino mazik imishtameros l'shem matzah she'ein royal l'shiva. He said that it's true you need matzah royal l'shiva, but what happened over there, the matzah was, when they made the matzah and they were shomer the matzah, they did it l'shem lachmei toda, and then they decided not to use it for the lachmei toda. So when they were deciding to eat the lachmei toda, it was royal. These matzahs that were made for the lachmei toda, it was royal l'shiva because they weren't going to use it for the lachmei toda. The only problem was when they did the shmira. They did the shmira l'shem lachmei toda. So he says that's not a chisaron in matzah royal l'shmira. In other words, he didn't require the shmira to be done, that the shmira had to be for matzah royal l'shiva. He says as long as when you eat the matzah it's royal l'shiva, it's good enough. And where were they eating? They weren't using it for lachmei toda. So that's why he had to look for a different reason why lachmei toda are no good. Because he ended up with the reason because the shmira was l'shem lachmei toda and not l'shem matzah's mitzvah. It's true the shmira wasn't l'shem matzah royal l'shiva, but he didn't require. He requires royal l'shiva as the eating time, but he didn't require that the shmira had to be for matzah royal l'shiva. He said that's what he's saying. The Rabba ain't no cholek al ikra din that you have to eat matzah which is royal l'shiva. The matzah she'ein royal l'shiva ain't yotze. And he agrees that the matzah when you eat it, it's not royal l'shiva. You're not yotze. Rak sfirle. The Eino mazik, but there's no problem. In other words, if you had matzah that you were shomer for a matzah which wasn't going to be royal yeshiva, he said that doesn't make, and that's not a chisaron in the shmira, right? And therefore, if you were shomer for lachmei toda, even though you were shomer for something which was not royal yeshiva, but then you're not going to use it for lachmei toda, so when you ate it, it was royal yeshiva, it's okay. So then he had to find out, so what was the problem? So the problem was, and it wasn't shmira l'shem mitzvah, it was shmira l'shem lachmei toda. Well, the emes kan royal yeshiva, he said, but the case of lachmei toda, it was royal yeshiva, kilo nishchad alei mazevach, they didn't check the korban toda on it, that it had to be, that it became lachmei toda. Rak was mishtameres l'shem matzah she'ein yeshiva, but when there was watch, they were planning to use it for lachmei toda, so it was, the shimur was matzah she'ein royal yeshiva, and he doesn't care about the shimur. Avol matzah shebe'emes ain't royal yeshiva, but if you have actually matzah which is not royal yeshiva, after moda Rabba, could be Rabba agrees with the svara of Rabbi Yosef that you need the einu yotze yedei chavasa. In other words, what he's saying is that there are two times you have to look at the time you want to be yotze the mitzvah of eating matzah, whether is it matzah royal yeshiva or not. He said could be both. Rabbi and Rabbi Yosef say that if it's royal yeshiva at the time you're eating it, there is no, then it's okay. And then there's a problem when you make the shmira. Does it have to be a shmira l'shem matzah's royal yeshiva? And he said that Rabbi Yosef said you need, and that's why lachmei toda is no good. And Rabbah said you don't need that at all, but you need shmir l'shem kima mitzvah. That's how he's learning. V'nei b'sukkah daf chav gimel amanal mavur sham plukta. There's a machlokas over there. Nim asa sukkah al gabe behema. Whereas you had a big animal, like a big elephant or something like that, and somehow you were able to put up a little booth on that animal. So there's a machlokas if you could be yotzei sukkah in that sukkah. Rabbi Yehuda posel, so Rabbi Yehuda says that sukkah is pasula, and Rabbi Meir says it's kosher. All time they'll see, and what's they're arguing about? Because there's a pasuk that says Chag HaSukkos Tasel L'Cho Shivas Yamim, and we darshan be'inin sukkah haroy l'shiva. You need a sukkah for Shivas Yamim that's going to be fit for 7 days. So what's wrong if the sukkah is on an elephant, let's say? Al-Kain posts Rabbi Yehuda because he says this sukkah you're not going to be able to use for 7 days. Na'ein haroy l'chol shiva, because the actual Chol HaMoed you could use it, but the actual days of Yontiv, or let's say Shabbos, even if it's Shabbos Chol HaMoed, you're not allowed to. How are you going to use that sukkah? You're not allowed to climb an animal, or ride an animal, or be on top of an animal. It's the Rabbanan, but he says it's not royal Shiva. The call Shiva, the ain't olin la b'yantiv. So because of the days of Yantiv, you can't climb an animal. The osli shnamish of Baal Chaim, because you're not allowed to use a Baal Chaim. So if you have a sukkah which is usable on top of an animal, but since you're not going to be able to use it on Yantiv and Shabbos, so it's not called royal Shiva. It's not roy for 7 days. So even those days where you could use it, let's say Chol HaMoed, where you could climb on it, it's not called a sukkah roy l'shiva. That's what Yehuda says, right? Reb Meir Sover, and Reb Meir holds that it's kosher. Why does he hold it's kosher? Because midaraisa mechsli kosher. Because he says we only care if it's roy l'shiva according to the Torah. According to the Torah, you're allowed to climb an animal on Yontiv and Shabbos. It was only a Gzeira you're not allowed to be mishtamish with a Baal Chai. And Meir Savar midaraisa mechsli chazik. Since midaraisa it's fit to be used for Rabbanan hu de Gazri, it's only in Gzeira de Rabbanan you can't be mishtamish with a Baal Chai. V'havi ru'uya l'shiva min Torah, and it is roy according to the Torah. It's usable. So that's good enough. In other words, it comes out that both Meir and Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yehuda agree that you have to have a sukkah roy l'shiva. As far as if the Torah, according to the Torah, it has to be roy l'shiva. Their machlokas is if it's roy l'shiva according to the Torah, but midrabanan it's not roy l'shiva. Is that a problem? Rabbi Yehuda says it is a problem. Rabbi Meir says it's not a problem. Mashma heichi de min Torah lo chazi. It seems to be from the Gemara that if midaraisa, let's say there didn't be the raisa, you can't climb an animal. He says then lo chazi l'kuma. They both would agree it's not a suitable sukkah. Kuli al mamodin de psula afilu b'shor sharui, even when it was usable. For example, on Chol HaMoed, kiven de ein royal l'shiva, because it's not royal l'shiva. So he says, you see, but just like we said by matzah, there's a din of royal shiva. He's showing you that there's a din by sukkah also. You need a sukkah royal shiva. V'had and mavur b'sukkah chavzayin v'beis the osin sukkah b'chol HaMoed. So he says, there's a machlokas tanoim, and if you could make a sukkah on Chol HaMoed, so l'chor, if you can make it a sukkah Chol HaMoed, it's not going to be able to be used for 7 days. And it says, the lezer sover einosim, you can't make a sukkah on Chol HaMoed. T'chsi, we don't pass like him. T'chsi v'chag ha'sukkos tatzal chashivas yamim. The bein and sukkah l'shiva, and this is not a sukkah for 7 days. The chachamim savri hachi kamar. The chachamim say that pasuk that shivas yamim means asay sukkah called shiva. You should have to have a sukkah called shiva, but not that you have to. Pashup shah, you don't have to have a sukkah which is royal shiva, but you have to have a sukkah all 7 days, and one sukkah will be roy for 1 day, another sukkah will be roy for another day, but you don't need a sukkah royal shiva. Imkain chazina, so the Pashup shah Rabbi Lazar holds you need a sukkah royal shiva, but the chachamim who say you could make a sukkah in Chol HaMoed, imkain chazina de lo darshi sukkah royal shiva. They don't require a sukkah royal shiva. So he's asking a question. Before by Rabbi Yehuda and Meir, we said both Tanoim agree you need a sukkah royal shiva according to the Torah. It was only a question if it's not royal shiva min Rabbanan, if that's a problem. But they both agreed you need a sukkah royal shiva min Torah. And here it seems to say that Chachamim hold you're going to make a sukkah in Chol HaMoed, in the Torah that's certainly not royal shiva min Torah, and they hold it's good. he says that's not a problem. Don't think that's a steer between these Chachamim and Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir. The Hasam Sfirlu, the Yochol Lasas Hasukkah Amos Sheyirtze, because the Chaim hold you could bake a sukkah whenever you want. You could do it on Chol Hamoed, it's no problem. Why? The Mikol Makam Sukkah Royal Chol Shiva. That sukkah you're making, you're not going to be. It's fit for 7 days. It's just that you're not going to be, since you made it on a Chol Hamoed, you're not going to be able to use it. There's no 7 days left of sukkahs, but it is a sukkah which is fit for 7 days. And but the case of Yehuda Meir was talking about that the sukkah isn't fit for 7 days because you couldn't use it on Yom Tov, you couldn't use it on Shabbos. So there was something wrong. It was made on a behema, and you're not allowed to be ola on a behema. So that's a different. That's you can't use it because of some kind of sul. So there, lo plika chacham. The chachamim would agree that's a problem. Because the chachamim just say that when you make it in Chol Hamoed, and it's made in a way that it's roy for 7 days, even though you're not going to, there's no 7 days left of sukkahs, but that's not a chisar and a roy l'chol shiva. But if it's a type of sukkah that's not suitable for 7 days, in kain hachinami, so he says, so he's comparing the din of 7 roy l'shiva by matzah to the din of roy l'shiva by sukkah, and he just told you what he holds by sukkah. In kain hachinami, but matzah sheina roy l'shiva. He says, well, if you have a case of a matzah that's not roy for 7 days, kul yom amoda den yotzei, so it would come out that just like by sukkah, everybody holds the matzah. Sukkah sheina roy l'shiva is no good if there's something wrong with it. So they would agree by, just like by sukkah, they all agree it's no good. So they all agree with by matzah too. And he says, so therefore he's saying it's probably the same din we find by sukkah, and that's what we find by sukkah would apply to matzah also. That matzah, everybody Tani would agree you need roy l'chol shiva. So even Rabbi, who didn't say that so it's only because he was talking about the shimur. You don't need shimur the matzah to be matzah roy l'chol shiva. Ke'es lo matzasi la ramim shyavis din zeh. And he says he's surprised because nowhere did he find in the Rambam that the Rambam says by matzah you need roy l'chol shiva. So why not? He says it seems to be a pashut din. The way he understands it, all the Tanoim will say by sukkah you need it would hold the same thing by matzah, right? And he understood both Rab and Rabbi Yosef held like that. So why shouldn't the Rambam bring that? It's not so pashut, the whole comparison of sukkah to matzah, because by sukkah there's a mitzvah of sukkah called shiva. Right? And anytime you want to eat the 7 days, you're mechuyev to eat in the sukkah, you sleep in the sukkah. If you hold, you have to sleep in the sukkah. So there's a din of sukkah called shiva. By matzah, most people hold that the mitzvah of matzah, at least the chiyuv, is only the first night. So the fact that you need roy l'chol shiva by sukkah, it doesn't necessarily mean by matzah you would need roy l'chol.
It's also very different because by sukkah it also connects into an aspect of dira. It's not just sitting there. It's not just like a mite. It's like it's supposed to be a new dwelling.
Right.
But by matzah, even according to Gra, there's no concept that you have to you can't eat chametz, but you don't have to reestablish like a main grain. Like there's no
right.
So you're right.
Okay, but he's saying he holds this pashut that there should be, but at least he holds that both Rabbi and Rabbi Yosef hold by matzah need roy l'chol shiva. So at least for that the Rambam should have made such a requirement. He says, but he doesn't find a place where the Rambam says any place that you have to have matzah roy l'chol shiva. The Avshalom, he says, possible. They not communicate with that. Maybe the Rambam didn't mention it because any case you're going to figure out that it's not roy l'chol shiva, there's going to be a different psul. For example, Lach Metoda. Lach Metoda was the case where Rabbi and Yosef were saying it's not roy l'chol shiva because the Lach Metoda could only be eaten at day and at night. But he didn't have to say the pasul of roy l'chol shiva because Rambam paskin that you need shmira l'shem matzahs mitzvah. So by Lach Metoda there wasn't a shmira l'shem matzahs mitzvah, so you didn't have to mention the pasul of roy l'chol shiva. There is such a pasul, but there's another pasul also. He says could be all the cases of you'll find that the matzah isn't roy l'chol shiva. There's other reasons that it's pasul, so the Rambam didn't have to mention the psul of roy l'chol shiva. It wasn't nogeya anything. He says could be you could call up psuli maybe a Rambam. All the cases of matzah which are pasul the Rambam brings v'hemi tamachir, and they have other reasons for their psulim. Could go and he said, for example, chalos toda, the ena yotzei b'lavachi. Chalos toda we hold you're not yotzei. Without the svara, it's not roy l'chol shiva because we hold the svara of Rabbah said it's not shmir l'shem mitzvahs matzah, it's shmir l'shem chalos Toda. The Gami says, call up Sulim Shebi Sham, and he says, all of Sulim that the Rambam mentions, Sulim Mitamacher, have a reason to be puzzled, and therefore there's no case where you have to use a psul of a not royal l'chol shiva, where you don't have another psul. He says, Efsher. Psul mitam zev lo mitamacher, Efsher lo mishkachos. To find the matzah which is only puzzled because of the royal shiva, he says, could be there is no case. Any case you'll find has a different psul. And if the Minchas Chinuch can think of a case, right, you could imagine that it's pretty hard to find, because he's an expert at figuring out cases, that's for sure. And he says, could be there is no such case. So I don't know if anyone figured out a case. So he's saying, could be the Rambam didn't bring the royal l'chol shiva because it wasn't no geya, because any case which you'll have a match is not royal l'chol shiva, it'll have a different psul. Alkain lo hutzrach lavi a Rambam said. That's why the Rambam didn't mention this din of kol shiva.
The argument with Rabbi, he tries to show that Rabbi could hold
a royal kol
shiva, but
he didn't need shmira for that. But
right. But does he have a reason why he wants to prove that Rabbi held of I can't remember.
No.
I know he proves that. I know he shows that it's possible to make that chilik and Rabbi could still hold the halacha of royal shiva.
He doesn't prove it.
He doesn't prove that he has to.
They're not like the Nils Chinuch, and they say Rabbi doesn't hold it in a royal shiva, and that's why the Rambam doesn't bring it, because he passes like Rabbi. So probably what's bothering is he held that matzah and sukkah were the same rule, and he saw by sukkah everybody agrees with royal shiva.
Right.
They didn't want to make a difference between matzah and sukkah, so he said matzah is royal shiva too, and even Rabbi would agree to that. And
he's just trying to maintain his theory, but there's no real proof to that theory.
Because the rare one that say that could be Rabbi doesn't hold the royal shiva.
And that answers up the Rambam, because it's the same Rambam on a
he says, Lefi Hamavur, B'Shalos Tshuva Shagasari Tzivin Sadik Vav Ba'arichus, is a long tshuva, Di'im Yesh Lo Matzah Shel Isser, She'ein Bo Elo Lav. There's a case that, let's say, the only matzah that's available to you is matzah which is usher to eat, but it's a lo sasa. So now the question is, should you eat this matzah? Because we have a principle of esei docha losa. So he says, the Gemara says clearly that if you have matzah and the matzah is tevel, so the Gemara says you can't eat matzah shel tevel. So the Shagasari said it could be over there, because tevel is if it's a lav sheyesh mitzvah b'dei shamayim. So he said it could be an essay as an docha tevel, so that's why you can't eat it. But could be, but you have a case of a matzah which is a plain lo sasa. So could be, we would say essay docha lo sasa. What? Well, that's what they're going to bring in. Yeah. That's the good Yishalmi.
Yeah.
The Mieshlo, so the Shagasari says, the Mieshlo matzah shel iser shein bo elala, which is a plain lav, and on a plain lav we usually have a principle of esei docha losa. So the Shagasari says, lemaisa in a chanami, esei the matzah docha halosa. The esei of matzah will be docha less ayin sham. Now he says, with your case, the gam Yerushalmi chala perek beis halach aleph maksha. The Gemara says there's a pasuk in Yeshua which implies when they first went into Eretz Yisrael, they crossed the Yarden on the 10th day of Nisan, and it says, and all the tuah was Chodesh. They were not allowed to eat Chodesh till the second day of Pesach. So the Yerushalmi says they didn't eat from the tuah Chodesh till the second day of Pesach, till the 16th day of Nisan. So Yerushalmi asks the question: the night of Leil Seder, why couldn't they eat the Chodesh for the mitzvah of matzah? Because Chodesh is a losa, and you should say esei docha losa. So he says gam. So he said the Shagasari passing the beferish that you do say esei docha losa by regular lo for matzah. The gam, he says that the Yerushalmi chala. The Yerushalmi says hiksha teisei esei the matzah the litkos losa of the Chodesh. Why couldn't they eat Chodesh the first night of Pesach? Because of the mitzvah of matzah, we should say esei docha losa. That's that. Well, the fi masha b'yarno, he says, according to what we said before, and he the docha losa, it's true that the esei is docha losa. And mikam makom achakain, let's say esei docha losa, if you eat the first kazayas, you'll say esei docha losa. But achakain, but once you do the mitzvah, eating matzah, which is a kazayas, that chodesh is going to be aser until the second day of Pesach. Mikol makom achar kach lematzah shel reshus, which we don't have the mitzvah matzah anymore. Ein ruya. You're not going to be able to eat it. The having ein ruya l'shiva. So he says, how could you say, maybe Yishalmi says, say esek docholosa, but if there's a din you need matzah royal l'chshtiva, this matzah is not royal l'shiva, because after you do the first kazayas and matzah, you don't have an essay anymore, and it's not royal l'shiva, so it's only rishus, and you're not going to be able to eat this matzah because it's chadash. So how could Yishalmi ask the kasha? We should have said esek docholosa. For after mitzvah, even though it's true at the first kazayas we would say esek docholosa, mikol makom, there's no essay over here because ein royal l'chol yemei ha Pesach. So what was the Yishalmi's kasha? Now it's not so clear. It's ein royal l'chol Pesach. In other words, he's understanding it has to be roy the complete 7 days of Pesach. But if it means it only has to be roy every day, so the first day of Pesach, it's roy to eat a kazayas for the mitzvah matzah, right? Because that's the kolosa. The second day of Pesach, it's already not chodesh anymore. So you'd be able to eat a kazayas every day. So he's understanding it. It's not roy l'chol shiva because after you eat the first kazayas on the first day, right, you're not going to be able to eat it till the second day. So he understands roy l'chol shiva means the whole length of the time of the 7 days it has to be roy to be considered roy l'chol shiva.
Without break.
What?
Without break.
Without a break. Yeah, but some achronim say maybe that's not the pshat. Maybe it means you have to be able to eat a kazayas every day of the 7 days. So the first day you'd be able to eat a kazayas al sesik dokolosa, and the next day it was already the 16th of Pesach. You could eat it. It's no longer chadash, so that's called roy l'chol shiva. But he understood it's not roy l'chol shiva because you have to be able to without a break from the beginning of Pesach to the end of the Pesach. So he said it's not roy l'chol shiva.
Asking Douglas to say, it seems to now affect the chefs. In other words, the argument is once you have an allowance to eat it, even though it really is also because it's Esed Dochalosa makes it. In other words, it's taking an action and applying to the chefs. I mean, it's like to say that Esed Dochalosa makes it a chefsif shel heter. It's like I understand this. I understand the argument because effectively you can't eat it, but it's not. But the truth is, when you think it's royal l'chol shiva, it has to be. You would think that in the chefse it has to be mutter for chol shiva. Esed dochalosa said it's. I understand it's for, but it's like a real jump. You know, it's from. It's
well, that's what he's arguing. That it's not royal l'chol. The Esed dochalosa can't make it royal l'chol.
But even in terms of that argument of the first day, even though you can eat a zayis for it, it doesn't make it a chefsel shel heter. It's sort of saying that you're allowed
to be dochel the yisur.
You're allowed to be dochel the yisur.
You're saying even that wouldn't be called royal l'chol.
Yeah, I understand the argument because effectively royal l'chol shiva, so you can eat it, but I find it a very interesting thing in the sense that you would think royal l'chol shiva is a din in a chefsa, and over here it's like I'm allowed because of this I'm allowed to do this avera, and it's still right. You know,
it doesn't change the chefsa. I want to tell you that there's a shittus in the Durim that say the Mishnah says if a person makes a neder. Let's say he makes a neder that matzah is usher to him. Right? So it says if you make a shua, that you're not going to eat matzah, then you can't make a shua of atalasa mitzvah.
Right.
But if you make a neder, so the Mishnah says a neder is kal of atalasa mitzvah. So a person makes a neder that he's not going to eat matzah, so it comes Leil Pesach, he can't eat the mitzvah, he can't eat matzah because the neder is kal. So the Rishonim ask a kasha. So what if he made a neder? A neder is allowed, and let the essay of matzah be docha the neder. Say essay docha losa. Why can't you eat the matzah because of essay docha losa? So some Rishonim answer that when you make a neder and you're over a neder, you're over a losa. Yes, it says over an essay losa is a lo yachol dvaro. There's an essay called yosmi piv yaseh. Right? So when you're over a neder, you're over a losa v'yesa. So an essa cannot be docha losa. So the Chinuch says that answer.
Right.
But other people aren't happy with that answer, because even though it's true that ein nesi docha losa v'yesa, but there's a Gemara in Yevamos that says that's only a regular losa v'yesa. But a losa v'yesa, which is yeshnu b'shayla, that you could be shayel on,
right,
you could be mentor,
right,
then an essa is docha, even a losa v'essa.
Right.
So a neder, you could go to a chacham and be matrid. So it's a losa v'yesa yeshnu b'shayla. So they say it's a dochik answer with the chinuch. There's ways out, but they're not so happy with that teretz, because an essa can be docha a neder of losa, even though a neder is a losa v'yesa yeshnu b'shayla.
Right.
Okay. So there is a number of achronim in the Dorim. In the back, there's like the Mukha Yosef, and I think a Chidush Ritva they have printed in the back, and it's really a Rambam in Perush of Mishnayos that says, they say a lashon that you only say esay docha losa when it's a mitzvah on the gavra, and it's a losa on the gavra. So what should he do? So we say esay docha losa. But when they say when the chayfetz is aser, the Torah makes that chayfetz aser to you, then you can't use that chayfetz even for a mitzvah. Right? There's a number. There's a Yosef. There's a Ritva. There's a Parish of Shnai. So there's a mashal like that also. He said you don't say. So in other words, they say so, which the way the Rishivas understand it, that you don't. And that's it can't be docha losa, which is an iser chetza. So, and it's an Or Sameach that says that too, and I think he brings some of these Rishonim, but he has a few kashas on that. He says one kasha he says is there's a Gemara in Yevamos that says when an Isha falls to Yibum, so it says that she's an erva to the Yavam. You can't. There's no mitzvah of Yibum by an erva, and the Gemara even has it's really a pasuk. The Gemara says ein esadocha losa sheish bo kares. It's not shayach. But the Gemara says that she's ushered to the Yavam at the lav. According to the Torah, you say yesig docha losa. The Rabbanan said give chalitza and don't do the yesig. But Midaraisa, the Gemara says an yesig is docha a losa.
It's a Kohen Gadol.
So let's say Kohen Gadol with Naaman. Okay, but the Gemara says a regular losa. So in those losas are cases of isser chepsas. They're not isser gavras over there. And even an erva, the Gemara only says it can't be docha because it's losa says sheyesh bo kares. But if it wasn't for the fact that it would be a l'chor and erva, it's an isser chepsin. Still, the Gemara says esay docha losa. So the Or Sameach says a chap. He says that's not a kash on the yesod, because he says this is what the Rishonim say in Esay. Let's say matzah can't be docha a type of isser dika chametz. It's because you can't use a chefza for a mitzvah. He says that's when the mitzvah doesn't come from the chayfetz. But he says by Yibum, where the chayfetz is the one that's going the mitzvah, it's the Yavama that's the source of the fact that there is a mitzvah. There's a mitzvah of Yibum over here because the Yavama is machayev the mitzvah. The Torah wants her to have Yibum. So he says if the mitzvah comes from the chayfetz, so then even if the lav is on the chayfetz, you would say esay docha lo sasa. And he goes through cases over there.
Right.
Then he says so when it comes to matzah shel chadash, he says how come Yerushalmi asks a kasha esay docha losa by matzah shel chadash? Why don't we say it's an esser and the chayfetz and you don't say esay docha losa? So yes, he says the Bavli never asked that kasha. How come we find this kasha in the Yerushalmi? You don't find that kasha in the Bavli. So he goes with his bekiyas and his yediyas, to prove that there's a machlokos between the Bavli and the Yerushalmi. He doesn't say stam, so he proves it from other cases. If chadash is an isser gaver or an isser chepsa. Wow. He says the Bavli holds, and I don't remember his proofs. You could look it up, but it's in the Or Sameach. Yeah. He says the Bavli holds chadash as an isser chepsa, and therefore they never asked the kasha. Let matzah. Why wasn't the mitzvah matzah docha chadash? The mitzvah can't be docha and isser chepsa. He said the reason the Yerushalmi asked the question, he says because Yerushalmi holds it's not stam and isser, because he said he proves because Yerushalmi says today it's usher, the 16th day it becomes mutter. It's not something inherent in the chayvetz that it's only usher because of zman, and he proves that the Yerushalmi holds that something which is usher because of zman is not called an isser chepsa, it's called an isser gaver. And that's why the Yerushalmi said, why wasn't the mitzvah matzah b'docha Chodesh. So I just you made me think of this because you brought up the Chefs over here, but he's saying the Yerushalmi, you asked the Kasha, held that Chodesh wasn't an Isser Chefs at all. It's only an Isser Gavra, and he proves that something the Yerushalmi holds. I don't remember the proofs that something which is Tully and Zman makes it ois Isser Chefs, because if it would be an Isser Chefs, there wouldn't be. How could it become mutter tomorrow? You know what happens that it becomes mutter. Although he said the Bavli does hold it's an Isser Chodesh, and the Bavli holds there's a matir. There's a matir the Omer, or the second day is a matir. No, but the Yerushalmi holds it's not. It's an Isser Gav. But anyway, the Yerushalmi asked, let the mitzvah matzah be shidoch l'chodesh, and he's asking a kasha, how could the mitzvah matzah be doch l'chodesh if there's din you need roi l'chol shiva? You would only have the mitzvah of matzah, the first kazayas, and then weiter would be aser als chodesh. The truth is, Rishalmi says a teretz. When asked why wasn't the mitzvah matzah docha chodesh, so one of the truths in Rishalmi says there was a gzeira kazayas rishon at the kazayas shniya, that he wouldn't be. You can't tell people just eat a kazayas. They might end up eating more than a kazayas. And if you eat more than a kazayas, you're going to be over a chodesh. But that was only a gzeira the rabbanon. But etzem, if you would be able to be exact and tell people to just eat a kazayas, you would say esei docha losa. But he's asking, how could you say esei docha losa if there's a din of matzah roi l'chol shiva? So he says.
That's a fascinating concept. That if it's in Zman, I mean, then you can't say the Yisur Chametz is no longer in the Chel. I mean, you'd have to if you extend it out, and I guess with something like Nida, well, she goes to mikvahs. There's an act. It's not
there's
just
a matir.
There's a matir. But I mean, you could. I mean, what about the Yisurim of?
Well, you're talking about chametz. Let me tell you that it's a very big machlokas in the Rishonim that if chametz, let's say chametz falls into heter before Pesach, if that's called Isura Bola or Hetera Bola.
Right.
So there's unfortunate that actually say the reasons that it's Hetera Bola because it's only Asur on Pesach and it fell in before Pesach, so when it fell in, it was considered heter, and heter is a batul, right? But there are Rishonim that hold chametz the whole year round is called isura,
right?
And it's and even though it's lamaisa only chayav karas when you eat it, but it's called isra the whole year round legabe Pesach.
And it's batul before. And that's why I said it's
called Isura Bola.
Yeah.
So it's not so pashut how you look at this concept of it's chametz the whole year round Lagabe Pesach. If that's it's nageya, it's not so not so pashut.
But Chodesh is different because it never becomes Asur again. I mean, so with chametz you can. It's sort of like
it's a middle madrega. It has an Isra chametz the whole year Lagabe. Pesach.
Yeah, and that's actually the Negea.
It's Machlokas Rishonim. That's there's Rishonim that actually hold it Sixura.
But we rely upon that. I mean, we rely upon that in terms of buying milk.
Heter Bola.
Yeah, well, because we say it's Bola, but if it was Heter, how's it Bola? But the fact is that the.
Don't forget, Heter Bola means it could be Batul. If it's Isura Bola, it's not.
No, I thought it was if Heter's not Batul. I thought the reason you could buy milk.
No, we say a terra. If you look at chametz as being a terabala, then it became murah. It became batul b'metzias, as it was heter. It was always chametz as it was when it became.
But just the metzias. I thought heter is not batul.
It's heter. Yeah, that's a different concept.
What? Okay.
Okay.
So
anyway,
so you're saying according to both sides, you can buy milk before Pesach. If you say heter balo or isur balo, because the fact is that once it's I thought the idea was that it's batal, and therefore since it's already batal.
I'm not sure. Okay.
Okay, fine. But that's just.
So therefore, he's asking on this Rishalmi, how could Rishalmi ask a kasha let the matzah be docha chodesh? He says because l'chor it's not roi l'chol. Even if you have the mitzvah matzah, it's only on the first kazayas. And it's not roi l'chol shiva.
So what does that mean after you eat the kazayas, not the kind of mitzvah say on the first night?
So therefore, the Yerushalmi seems to say that if you eat the first kazayas, you would be mekan the mitzvah say. But he's asking a question.
After the first kazayas,
you wouldn't be able to eat anymore.
No. Aren't you mekan the mitzvah say after the first kazayas?
So Pashup Shot, the mitzvah of Achilas Matzah is only in the Kazayas, and if you eat more, it's not a mitzvah. But there is a netziv that says that Kazayas is only a minimum requirement. If you eat more, you're makayim a mitzvah. So he holds you, but it's not a chiyuv. It's only the first kazayas you're chayiv. But on that kiyuv mitzvah, you're not going to say esei docha losa because you're not mechuyev. But he holds you are makayim. This is the Vilna Gaon holds anytime on Pesach they eat matzah, you get a mitzvah. But even if you don't like the Vilna Gaon, there are a lot of Rishonim, a lot of rayas to the Netziv, and the Netziv himself brings a lot of rayas that the kazayas is only a minimum, and if you eat more than a kazayas, you're going to get a mitzvah in every kazayas you eat. But it won't be docha a losa, so that kiyum mitzvah. So he's asking, how could the Yerushalmi ask the kasha, asking docha losa, because it's not going to be roy l'shiva, and I lost the place, now you find it.
I think it's at the lamed.
What?
At the little lamed there? Over there?
You can't think. What's the head of the paragraph?
Ach.
Okay. So he says. The gam. He asked the Rishalmi. He says. V'nein urbaza. So he asked the kasha. Then he says v'nein urbaza harav bal tam hamelach. He found this kasha in the tam hamelach. There's a big famous sefer called the Shar Melech. He was earlier, and then on the bottom there's a section called tam hamelach, which is a different akron. So he says, I found this kasha in the Tam HaMelech, Perek Vav Mechamas HaMatzah, Perek Gimel Min Adorim, Ach Shekasav, the Habraisa, the Rabbi Cholekas Alseh. He says he learned that Rabbi doesn't hold to the din of Roy L'Chol Shiva. In other words, the Gemara brought a Braisa that Rabbi Yosef said you need Roy L'Chol Shiva, but he held that Rabbi doesn't hold the Roy L'Chol Shiva. So it could be this Yerushalmi of that matzah should be dochel chedesh also doesn't hold the roy l'chol shiva kvar kasafti, but he says I've already said that I don't agree with him. No one argues on the din of roy l'chol shiva, and even Rabbah agrees the roy l'chol shiva. The reason Rabbah said a different reason by chalas toda, because he said that even though now it's roy l'chol shiva because you're not going to use it for chalas toda, right? It's just that the shmir was for chalas toda, so he said he didn't need. He says rak l'shmir leidenu mazik im hashimur l'shem matzah shein roy l'shiva. He doesn't need. You don't need shmir l'shem matzah roy l'shiva. Uladidan, and we all like Rabbi Yosef. Einu mazik gamkin im hashimur l'shem matzah shein roy b'chol Shabbos. Just like he said before, we had there's a din you need a matzah which is roy ti b'chol Shabbos. Like he said bikurim, he said other things. Meiser Sheni discussed it's not roy l'chol Shabbos. You have to have matzah which is fit to be all over the world, right? So he says, and that's, we don't need Shimur for that. So he says, just like you don't need Shimur for that, so Rabbi, you don't need Shimur for the din of Roy L'Chol Shiva either. But everybody agrees to the din, it has to be Roy L'Chol Shabbos. They only argue about Shimur, Kamo Bikurim, like we said by Bikurim. The Gama Rav Hanal, okay, so therefore he says he's not happy with the Tam HaMelech's teretz, that the Tam HaMelech says that Yerushalmi is going that you don't need Roy L'Chol Shiva like Rabbah, because he says he doesn't hold Rabbah holds that way. He holds everybody holds you need Roy L'Chol Shiva. He said the Gamma Rav Hanal Kasa the Tali B'Puktas Rabbi Lezer Rabbanan B'Sukkah. He also said it's totally in this Machlokas of Tanoim by Sukkah. If you make a Sukkah in Chol HaMoed, Rabbi Lezer said it's not Roy L'Chol Shiva, and the Chacham said it is considered Roy L'Chol Shiva. He says it could be it's totally in that. And therefore could be that your Yerushalmi goes like the Mandamer by Sukkah you don't need Roy L'Chol Shiva, so by Matzah you don't need Roy L'Chol Shiva. L'Kvar Kasafti D'Afshir Bazek Liyam Amodim. He says could be everybody holds that Matzah you need Roy L'Chol Shiva, and it ain't no Inyan L'Puk the Rabbi Lezer Rabbanan. There's no sushtel to their case of Sukkah Roy L'Chol Shiva, because he said there the Sukkah is fit for 7 days, just that there's no 7 days of Sukkah left, but there's no psul in it. Im kain be'emes naflu dinim elu the mefalpol shagasari lein matzah shel iser bebira. So he says this pilpul that the shagasari says you would say esi dokolosa. In the Yerushalmi you have the Yerushalmi says matzah should be dochel chadesh, which is the right of the shagasari, but you have these different problems that it's not roy l'chol shiva, and you're answering that according to the Tam HaMelech you don't need roy l'chol shiva. That Yerushalmi holds that way, but it comes out the way he's saying we do hold you do need Roy L'Chol Shiva, so you'll never have a case of Esli Dokolosa because it'll always be not Roy L'Chol Shiva. You'll only be able to eat a Kazayas, so you won't have the whole Shiloh. The Ayin Shem B'Tam Melech Shekasav Gabi Tevel. Yerushalmi says the Tam HaMelech says if you have Matzah Shel Tevel, the Havi he says there it is Roy L'Chol Shiva. because really tevel is called roy because even though you can't eat tevel, but you could always be mafresh trumas and give the trumas some isis and it'll be fit. He said the yachol happy shalav, right? The gam shvuas in a dorm he says is called roy lachol shiva. The yachol lishalav because we can show on your nether. Whereas if you have matzah, which in its present state you wouldn't be able to eat, like it's tevel, but he says the very fact that you could be mafresh truma and it's not going to be tevel anymore, or like a neder, you could be matter the neder, so that would make it roy lachol. That would be enough to consider roy lachol shiva. Abu chodesh, there's nothing you could do. Shar iser lamba yotzim bo, and Yisham Yisrael machodesh ha'ain a roy l'shiva. Who ha'ara nachona lo nisker rishonim v'achronim. He says this Tama Melech is a nice shaila, but he didn't find this in rishonim v'achronim. Dimi Dorim Esher Lomer, Dima Esek Docha, Havimatza Royal Yeshiva, Balav time to Imishah. Why? He said by Neder you could say that if the Esek is Docha, it's called Royal Lachol Shiva. Why? He doesn't say why, I don't know why. Without the Svar, they could be Shoel. Why? Rak the Lo Havimatza Shena Royal Yeshiva, Ali Mena Royal Lachol Olam. Oh, here, this is the Svar. He's saying by Neder, let's say a person made a Neder not to eat matzah. Matzah is also to me. So the question was, how can he say Esek Docholosa because it's not Roy Lachol Shiva? He said maybe there's no problem because it could be for you it's not Roy Lachol Shiva because you made a neder, but other people could eat it. So maybe that's called Roy Lachol Shiva. Who says it has to be Roy Lachol Shiva to you? It has to be Roy Lachol Shiva to someone. So he says could be a neder even if there's a neder without the svar that it's Roy to you because you could be shal on your neder. Without that svar, he says could be it's Roy Lachol Shiva because other people could chalol. Kumo chalas toda the nasa noser. They said that's the chalas toda became noser. Kumo gabi sukkah. There it wasn't roy for anyone. All the cases not roy lachol shiva, where it wasn't roy for noser, it's not roy for anyone. So chalas toda is not roy lachol shiva because you can only eat it a day and a night, and then it becomes noser, and then it becomes osir to everyone. Or the case of the sukkah on the elephant, no one could claim that it's not roy lachol shiva for anyone. How gab in the darm everyone, other people could eat it. El the day ain't a roy. But it's just for you, you're not allowed to eat it. So he's saying, even without the svar, you could be shayl. Could be that's called roy lachol shiva, as long as it's roy to someone. So havi shaper matzah royal shiva. Okay, last week we didn't learn last week. But 2 weeks ago I told you a svara from Rabbi Panovitcher, and he says like this, on this kasha roy lachol shiva, he says like this, he says, in the time when there was a Korban Pesach, there was 2 mitzvahs of eating matzah. There's one that says you should eat the Korban Pesach on matzah and marom yoklu. You have to eat the Pesach with matzah and mor, which was completely part of the mitzvah of eating Pesach. You have to eat the Pesach with matzah and mor. And then there was a special din, an individual din, which only applies to matzah, not more, that even if you're not eating a Korban Pesach for whatever reason, you still have to, like nowadays, we don't have a Korban Pesach, we still say matzah is deraisa. So even when there was a Korban Pesach, there was a special mitzvah. Even if you weren't bringing a Korban Pesach, there was a mitzvah of erev tofu matzahs to eat matzah. Whereas more, that's not true. I mean, more only goes with the Korban Pesach. So nowadays more is only the Rabbanan because we don't have a Korban Pesach. And even in those days when there was a Pesach, he says more was only a mitzvah to eat with the Pesach. If you didn't have a Pesach, or for some reason you didn't bring a Pesach, there was no mitzvah of more according to the Torah. So, but with matzah, he says there's 2 parts. There's a mitzvah of matzah, which is part of eating the Korban Pesach, to eat it with matzah and more. But there's also a special mitzvah of erev tochlu matzahs. And he says, so therefore, in the time when there was a Korban Pesach, there was a double mitzvah of eating matzah. So that we have rules by matzah. As for example, it has to be roy l'chol shiva, or it has to be roy l'chol moshe sechem. Is this a t'nai and a requirement for both mitzvahs of matzah, or only for one of the mitzvahs of matzah? So he says like this. He says we find that the mitzvah of eating matzah with Korban Pesach, matzah and more with Korban Pesach, is even by Pesach Sheni. If a person didn't bring a Pesach Rishon, he was given 30 days, and then he could bring a Pesach Sheni. When he brings a Pesach Sheni, he also has to eat the Pesach Sheni with matzah and more. He says, and over that matzah, he says we don't find any requirements. It has to be matzah roy l'chol shiva, it has to be roy l'chol moshe sechem. He's saying all these requirements of a matzah are not in the mitzvah of matzah, which is part of the Korban Pesach. That's his chiddush. And he says, and he brings a slot like that. He says these requirements for the mitzvah of matzah are only requirements of the mitzvah of matzah, which is an independent mitzvah of Berav Tochlu Matzos. So he says in the Yerushalmi's time, when the Yerushalmi was saying when they went into Eretz Yisrael, it says they had a Korban Pesach. So he says when the Yerushalmi asked the question, why couldn't they eat Chodesh? Let the mitzvah matzah be docha Chodesh. And we have conscious. How could it be? It wasn't Roy. It wasn't Roy L'chol. It wasn't Roy L'chol Shiva, right? He says, what mitzvah matzah was the Yerushalmi talking about? He said the mitzvah, the independent mitzvah of matzah, berav tochel matzah, zayin achanam. You need Roy L'chol Shiva. He says, could be the Yerushalmi was talking about the mitzvah of eating the korban matzah with the korban pesach, and that there is no requirement of matzah Roy L'chol Shiva. And that's why the Yerushalmi had a question. So why couldn't they eat Chodesh? They wouldn't be yotze in the mitzvah of matzah, because it's not Roy L'chol Shiva, but at least they'd be able to eat matzah with the korban Pesach. So the Yerushalmi's question, when it said at the mitzvah of matzah bidocha Chodesh, meant the mitzvah of eating matzah with the korban Pesach. And so the kasha, how could it be? It's not Roy L'chol Shiva. Who cares if it's not Roy L'chol Shiva? There's a mitzvah meeting out matzah with the Korban Pesach, and they had Korban Pesach. So that was the Yerushalmi talking about. That's what so there's a lot of kashas on this. But the main question is, if you look in the Nusach of the Yerushalmi says, why wasn't the mitzvah of matzah, berav tochlu matzah, bidocha Chodesh? So it speaks out beferish the mitzvah of berav tochlu matzah.
Also becomes a problem.
Right? And then, that's one kasha. So it could be he didn't have that in his Nusach of the Yerushalmi. But the other kasha, the Yerushalmi answered, there was a gzeira gzayas rishon at gzayas shniya. And most people hold that this mitzvah of eating matzah with Korban Pesach doesn't require a gzayas. The mitzvah of berav tochlu matzah is also not chila, requires a gzayas. But the mitzvah of eating matzah with Korban Pesach, it's not so pashut. Right. But just like that, they say more doesn't require a gzayas, and matzah doesn't require a gzayas. So, and Yerushalmi said there was a gzera, he won't stop at a gzayas. A gzera gzayas rishon at gzayas shniya. So it's another reason to think it was speaking about the mitzvah of berav tochlu matzah. So those were two questions. There's other questions on it, but that was his chiddush. But he has this nice right from Pesach Sheni, because Pesach Sheni you have the same mitzvah of eating with matzah more, and there's no special din of l'chorah. It's not mistav. You need matzah roy l'chol shiva. There is no chol shiva. It's only one day of 1 hour of Pesach Sheni. Okay.
I just find it interesting that the essay is really Korban Pesach, but this is a chelik of the essay. But even the chelik of the essay is docha.
Yeah, there's rise to that a chelik of the mitzvah can be docha.
Even though you're really going to fulfill the mitzvah.
Right.
Pesach.
Yeah, I have to think of the rise, but I once worked on that, and there are rayas to that. I also brought a because I remember not like Rabbi Yisrael, because there's a question in Achronim when the Rabbanim were masakin brachos, where they were masakin brachos only on mitzvahs d'raisa, even Rabbanim which were independent mitzvahs, or even parts of the mitzvah. And I brought a raya because Morah is not an independent mitzvah at the time of Korban Pesach, and it says clearing the Rambam when they ate the Korban Pesach, they made a bracha. And the Gemara says they made a bracha. I don't know if the Gemara says, the Rambam says clearly they made a bracha on Morah. And Morah isn't independent. They made a bracha on the Pesach, they made a bracha on Matzah, so you could say those were independent mitzvahs, but it says they made a bracha on Morah also.
So the Rabbanim was sakin a bracha.
So a bracha, you see the Rabbanim were masakin a bracha on a chelik of the mitzvah, because Morah is only a chelik of the mitzvah of Korban Pesach. You're saying, but you're bringing a raya that you say, according to Brebitzl, you're saying esigdoklosa even on something which is only a chelik. But I think they have rayas that's not a problem.
Yeah, I mean that's a full fulfillment of the mitzvah. So I'm not saying it doesn't.
Yeah, but it's a chiddush. It's still a chiddush. You have to have a raya. You have to have a raya to say that. Yeah. Okay, what time is it now?
9:28.
So let's stop.